currently. I wish I had good news ending soon. If you're anything like my kids, they are eager to get back to the normality of school. My 15-year-old daughter is a very social person, and she would love to be back with her friends. Here's the news as I've got it for you guys. Number one, last week when Governor Walz got on TV, he said we're definitely sheltering like we are until May 4th. And then he also was asked the question directly about school, and he said that the chances were slim that we would be getting back together this school year, strictly because of the fact that number one, we don't have the testing capability yet to actually find out who has been exposed to this virus. It would be great if we did, and we were promised weeks ago that we would have that at this point, that anybody who wanted to be tested could be. I totally want to be tested right now to find out if I've got this, because the sooner we find out who has had this before, the doctors are assuming that then you've got a level of immunity that would allow you to go back to normal. And I would love to do that. And in fact, I've got friends of mine who are suspicious that they've had this virus already because they got really horribly ill for a few days. Then they recovered like most people do with COVID-19. And they're now suspicious they could go back, but we don't have the number of tests required to actually even find out who has and has not been exposed. And so that's currently our situation. We are currently wrestling with, though, an interesting situation on the national level, where right now the president is eager to get back to normal, but we don't have the testing in place to find out who has been exposed. And so that's currently our debate that's taking place. Is we've got different groups who are at different levels of eagerness to get back to normal. And there's a dilemma then of how quickly can we get back to normal while still being safe. And so I'll be keeping you in the loop this upcoming week as we get more and more news. And like I've mentioned previously, if you want to use the chat function on the right-hand side or unmute your microphone to ask any questions, you can certainly feel free to do so. Our activities this week, though, are going to be focused around Chapter 25. So let me show you a few different things. And then, like I mentioned, we don't need to spend a long time, but we want to make sure that you guys are doing what you need to in order to be safe. So first of all, there's going to be a recording of this session available to you later on today, so you're able to check this out. Make sure you're taking attendance as well, so that you are keeping up with your attendance and not getting marked absent accidentally. I am expected to be reaching out and contacting people who are not doing attendance, and B, not doing homework while you guys are out. Conversely, though, this is a great time for you to be bulking up your grade. If you're missing any stuff, now's the great time to be able to get that done. We're going to be working with the text assignment for Chapter 25 this week. And my plan is very straightforward and simple. I would like you to read Chapter 25, Section 1 tonight to be ready for tomorrow. What we're going to be taking a look at is we're going to be studying what's going on with the civil rights movement. And let me bring you to, shoot, I had this open, and there we go. So we're going to be taking a look at the civil rights movement. And in particular, one of the things that we're going to find with the civil rights movement is I'm going to want you to read Lesson 1 so I can show you tomorrow what's happening in the 1940s and the 1950s to accelerate our movement towards civil rights. With the three questions that you see here, and this is found on your Schoology page, you're going to find that for African Americans during this time period, they are able to benefit from a number of different things that will allow civil rights to really move faster during this time period than it's ever moved in the past. Number one, there's freedom of transportation to move with modern conveniences like the car, the bus, the train. So African Americans are able to move. And many African Americans during World War I and World War II moved from south to north during the Great Migrations. And what they're discovering is in the north, there isn't like a safe place for African Americans to go to escape racism. They're discovering that Northerners can be racist in ways that are similar to the South. And in particular, they're experiencing housing segregation, where for many African Americans, when they move to the inner city, many white people move out to the suburbs, and then they create rules that make it impossible for African Americans to follow white Americans into the suburbs where your school is currently located. So what's going to be happening is for African Americans, they're going to also be taking advantage of the new medium of filming and TV. And in particular, what they're going to be able to do is they're going to be able to show that with the court case Plessy versus Ferguson that claimed that there would be separate but equal locations for African Americans, they're going to be able to prove that separate does not mean equal. In Montgomery, you've got people who are being forced to move to the back of the bus, like Rosa Parks. When it comes to school, there's segregated schools where African Americans and white kids are being put into different schools, and the quality of the school is different depending on which groups of individuals are being served. What's going to be happening then tomorrow is I'm going to be moving you through sections. So tomorrow when we get back together, we will quickly review lesson 1. I'm going to be doing an ed puzzle with you also to show you the civil rights movement. We'll then be taking a look at what's going on with the civil rights movement during the time period, what gains are being made as the NAACP is working through the court system. And that's the group that I'd really like to highlight for you, is you're going to find that right after World War II, the NAACP is going to start bringing court cases to prove that what the South is calling separate but equal is actually separate but unequal. Now, what will be happening then is when this movement takes place, especially with the court case Brown versus Topeka Board of Education, Brown versus Topeka Board of Education will create the school system that you and I get to experience nowadays. The diversity that we have inside of our classroom wasn't even at Armstrong High School when I attended in the 1980s. And so we are a much more diverse school nowadays, much better for the fact that we've now got more diversity in our school, with more backgrounds and experiences to be able to engage in. And what we find is that when you are with people of different races and different ethnicities, you start to discover how similar we are rather than how different we are. And that's what racists really are trying to prevent, is the idea that if you can keep people segregated, you could make up stereotypes about different ethnic groups. When you're around one another, you realize they're just people, and super nice people at that, obviously. And so that's what's going to be happening is in the 1950s, the courts will start ending segregation, which gives us the school system that you're in right now. But what's going to start being discovered is there are people in the North and the South who will start actively resisting desegregation efforts. And that's where you then have Martin Luther King and other civil rights leaders come from. And that's who we're going to be studying later on this week, where many people will start realizing just because the United States government says it's illegal to segregate doesn't mean that you're eliminating racism, discrimination, or other sorts of things. And that's what Martin Luther King will be trying to address as we're studying that this upcoming week. This is also the reason why way back when we had Black History Month, I tried to emphasize the idea that we should be doing Black and other sorts of national histories when we are studying this course. And in particular, what I do want to be considering is this is not kind of like a one-day aside of like, here's Martin Luther King Day. Instead, what we're going to be doing, we will study the African-American civil rights movement for this week. And then what you should realize is there are whole groups of people in the United States who also are facing discrimination. And when they see the tactics that African-Americans like Martin Luther King are using, nonviolent protest, using the media to show how discrimination and racism still exists, you're going to have women start protesting. Other nationalities like Mexican Americans will start protesting. Asian Americans will start protesting. You will have older people start protesting, LGBTQ. And so that's why when we look at Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, what's impressive is they show a technique for how we can take the Declaration of Independence that was written by white guys to try to get independence from Britain. And it's going to give an opening for all sorts of other groups to start pushing for their groups to also get rights at the same time. And so that's why he is such an important person to be studying. What you should also understand, though, is that there are many Americans during this time period who are then going to watch as tons of change takes place. And that's going to be very threatening to them. And so you're going to have a number of people who start pushing back during this time period. And if you've noticed that our politics right now is incredibly divided, that's part of the reason why. Not the whole reason, but it's a major chunk of it. So what I'd like to highlight then for you is this, what we're doing for this week. Tomorrow, please have section 1 of chapter 25 read so you understand what's up with the NAACP. I'll then be talking to you about them briefly tomorrow. I'll give you an ed puzzle to kind of see in action what they're up to. And then we will start moving into what Martin Luther King was up to. And then we're kind of doubling back towards what we studied with JFK and LBJ last week. JFK does not want to get involved in civil rights. He's dependent on white Southerners to get elected as a Democrat, but he's also getting pressure from African Americans who voted for a Democrat, JFK, and they want change. And that tension is going to lead to an explosive time period where we're going to have a lot of assassinations, a lot of violence, a lot of terrorism. The KKK comes back in the 1960s. And it's very much the reason why we have to study this in a good amount of detail. Because while some Americans would like to say, look, why don't we just let this go? That was a long time ago. This was during your grandparents' generation. So the idea that this was something that is like years and years ago, like Civil War style, this is more like when you see the old person at the grocery store, they remember watching this on TV in a very explosive, divisive, and tense time period that's pretty close to where we are nowadays. For you guys also, though, I did a ton of grading this past weekend, and I plan on wrapping up your grading soon so you can see where you're sitting currently. You should be able to see that on Schoology. If you see any grading issues, feel free to contact me and let me know. If you notice that there are any empty spots on your grade sheet, I expect you to come to these sessions either in person or else later on in the day by watching the recording. But if you find that you're missing anything that we've done while we've been doing digital learning, go back to this document that you have right here, and it shows you my daily lesson plans, and it describes what's going on with each of the activities that we're doing. And if you've got any questions about any of them, reach out to me either via email or else reach out to me and we can have a Google Meet to be able to talk that through. But our goal at this point is we want to be able to give you 100% on all the activities that you're doing during this time period that you're out, because your life is already chaotic enough. We don't want your grade to be a mess. And if you're hanging with me and getting done what you're supposed to be doing on a daily basis, you should see your grades stay good, or if it wasn't good initially, it should get better. And if you're missing work, this is the perfect time to make that better. Also keep in mind the opposite. If you're not doing the work, if you're just dipping into these recordings and doing nothing, I'm supposed to be reaching out to your parents, and I'm going to be starting that out today. So please make sure that that's not you. I would prefer not to have to do grading and prep for these activities and then also spend time calling a lot of people if you can get this stuff done. And if you find that this is hard and you need help, let me know. At this point, then, I am done with what I need to say to you, other than I hope that you're staying healthy and staying socially distanced from everybody. And I know it's hard for people your age because even though you've got technology that can keep you connected, you definitely benefit from being around people. And I hate the fact that you're being inconvenienced in the way that you are, but be smart. They're finding that the reason why our state is doing well with the coronavirus is largely because we are smartly not doing things that are putting us in risk to spread this disease. Doing stuff that would put us in jeopardy now would be really crazy. So please make sure that's not you. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. And if there's anything I can do to help out, let me know. But otherwise, I'm going to stay in here until you guys all dip out of the room. And then this recording will be available later on today. Have a great day, guys.
Did you read the email that I sent you last night?
Jacob, I haven't looked at any emails yet, but I will be looking at emails in just a little bit. Are you doing okay?
Yes.
Yeah, what was the email about? If you want to talk about it now, we could.
It says I got 0 out of 10 on chapter 24 text questions.
Okay. Do you want to give me just a second? I can take a look and see what happened with that. So if you want to stay on the line, I'll look and see what happened with the grading of those. And Jacob, you're in my period 6, right?
Right.
Okay. I see what was going on, and I was going to reach out to you today. Jacob, the one that you submitted to me was the blank copy that didn't have any typing on it. So all I got from you was the questions, and there were no answers that you had typed onto there. So I
Okay.
would delete that submission. And if you wanted to go back into your files and find in your Google Drive the copy that has your answers typed on it and resubmit that, that then fix your
Okay.
grade.
Okay.
Are you good?
Yes.
Hey, if you see anything else like that pop up, you handled it totally right, and so keep me in the loop, especially given the fact that we're not seeing each other daily. Mistakes like that can happen, and it's going to be no big deal. So just get that submitted sometime today, and I'll keep my eyes open for it.
Okay.
Anything else you need?
No.
All right, Jacob. You have a great day. All right. I'll talk to you.
You too.
Okay.